So hello and welcome to another edition of the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry. This episode hopefully will be a quick episode. Really just what I wanted to talk about is, have you ever been in a formation, morning formation, once we're mounted I'm talking about, and everyone's arguing that they are dressed but no one else is. The right flank is dressed but no one else is. The left flank is dressed but the right flank is not dressed, and you get arguments on I'm dressed and you're not dressed, and there's this obvious dog leg in the middle of the regiment or the middle of the squadron or whatever you are. I know personally I've experienced this, and this actually shows the importance of having the fundamentals of the manuals in your head. Poinsetts from the school of the trooper dismounted all the way through the school of the squadron. One of the specific things is that there are always guides on the flanks of whatever group you're talking about. If you read in the early, the school of the platoon mounted, the school of the squadron mounted, even on the dismounted side of things, and small groups as Poinsetts goes and instructs those guys, there are always orders given about guiding left, guiding right. When left in front, the guide is on the right. When right in front, the guide is on the left. And there's all this talk about guides. Now, personally, I remember reading the orders and not knowing what guide left meant. In reenactments, when doing living histories, our commanders would never identify the guide. And I read it in the manual, and no guides would be said. And I didn't know what it meant, and I realized this is something that for a living historian generally is not done. For reenactments, generally not done. But Poinsett actually is very adamant that says the guide should always be said. And the reason for this, going back to the dog leg example that I talked about, is the guides, again going back to the definition of the guides, are basically the sergeants. Now I'm kind of overgeneralizing here, but generally the sergeants on either end of the platoon or of the squadron, or if we're talking maybe a section of guys, the sergeants on either end are those representative guides. And so in order to keep your regiment or your squadron or your platoon or your division or even your section lined up and dressed appropriately without a dog leg in the middle, it's important to have those experienced sergeants on the end. So just a really quick episode. I wanted to, kind of talk about that, show you some examples maybe. But if you ever experienced a dog leg and everyone thinks they're dressed but no one is, there's an obvious dog leg and someone's not dressed but no one's willing to take responsibility. The reason is because really the commander, the leader of the organization, has not placed experienced sergeants on either end to pose as guides. And again, as troopers, you being the rank and file, how do you know if you're truly dressed? Yeah, you dress right, but make sure your guide on the left is in between you as well. If you have a guide on the right, you dress right, you have a guide on the left, and you can make sure you're right in between those guys, you are dressed appropriately. So again, for you commanders out there, for your captains, for your colonels, informing your men, make sure you have experienced sergeants or corporals on either end. Again, ideally sergeants, but that may not always be the case. So just throwing it out there, guys. If you have a dog leg and your line is not dressed appropriately, but no one's claiming responsibility because they think they're dressed, the reason is because there's no sergeants on the end. So thanks again for watching. Please again like us on Facebook. Please click the notification bell on the right hand side here, and until we see you in the field, which I hope is soon, ride hard.